Hello, everybody. We are about to go live. Well, we're going live right now, and I'm just giving folks a few minutes to come and step into the room. I am Dani Tirrell. I am the curator for Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas, and we have a surprise Sunday dinner at 12 noon today. Sunday dinner. I'm in the wrong program. We have so many programs going on. This is our physical distancing, intimate conversations. That's the program that I'm on right now. I have Sunday dinner on the mind. Maybe I'm hungry. I am hungry. Welcome to this conversation. I am excited to talk to Miss Shakiah Daielson and Miss Melba Ayco, Miss Lekema Bell, Cipher Goings, and Alecia Lemons from Northwest Tap Connection. It's weird to say that because I also work there, so I'm trying to act like I'm not working there. But welcome, everybody. People are slowly stepping into the room. I will give you some information about Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas in case you know nothing about us. Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas is the only local nonprofit organization solely dedicated to presenting emerging Black arts, artists, and ideas in the Seattle area. We believe in the value of community, creativity, identity, and passion. These values serve as our strategic frame and guide to day-to-day operations and program decisions. We work out of the historic Langston Hughes Performing Arts Institute in the historic Central District. It is an ADA compliant facility rich with culture and history. Our mission is to provide a platform for provocative arts and ideas that foster awareness and involvement in Black experiences. And lastly, we envision a world where cultural experiences are valued. So for everybody tuning in, we thank you. We welcome you to this conversation. Again, I'm talking to Northwest Tap Connection. We are going to be talking about the video that has just taken off once again, Hell You're Talking About, that was created, choreographed by Lekema Bell with some help from some other instructors, and it was created for Northwest Tap Connection. And so we're going to start bringing in some folks so they can introduce themselves, and we're going to start the conversation. First, we're going to bring in Alecia Lemon. Can you tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do? If we can hear
her. Hi, I'm Alecia Lemon. I'm 17. I've been dancing at Northwest Tap Connection for 10 years now, and I'm a dancer in the video.
In a video, or the video we talking about?
The video we're talking about.
Cipher, who are you? What do you do?
Hi, my name is Cipher Goings. I am 19 years old. I've been dancing at Northwest Tap Connection for at least the last 11 years. And I am also a dancer in the Hell You Talking About video.
Awesome, thank you. Let's go next to my sister, Miss Lekema Bell.
Hello, I'm Lekema Bell. I am a professional African dancer, performer, event producer, and owner of the Skin I'm In LLC. I currently teach at Northwest Tap Connection African Dance, and I'm also one of the dancers in the video, the Hell You Talking About video.
Awesome, and let's move on to the awesome sister, Miss Shakiah Daielson. This is all about you today.
Hey, what's up? Hey, my name is Shakiah Daielson. I was over the hip hop program actually at Northwest Tap Connection. Very thankful to have been a part of something very unique and different and freeing as a Black artist. And I am the creator, visionary for the Hell You Talking About piece. Is that the right? Is that? Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes, it's my piece.
That's awesome.
And I am not in the video at all.
Yes.
At all.
Yes, we are going to move on.
And did not need to be.
It did not need to be. I feel you on that a lot of times. Let's move on to Miss Melba Ayco. She is the founder, artistic director of Northwest Tap Connection. and we cannot hear her. Mm-hmm.
What about now?
We can hear you now. Technology, y'all. Technology is beautiful.
Yeah, well, I hit that one. So I want to say, first of all, that I'm glad to know that I'm not the only old one, because Mr. Danny, you said that the choreographer for this piece was now I have, because I've been with Baby all for the last month, okay? So, but I'm so, thank you, Mr. Danny. I'm not the only one that be forgetting stuff. Yes. You're all right.
Yes.
Because everybody knew, we all sit there with shaking heads, but we knew what you meant, okay? So
I did say it was about Shakiah too. So, I'm trying to
That's the thing about blackness, you know what I mean? It's a good thing when you're sitting in a hub of blackness having this chit chat. We can talk about Mr. Danny and he take it, you know what I mean? Because that's what it's all about. So definitely I'm Miss Melba. What you gotta say, Mr. Danny? What you gotta say? Come on, talk to me.
We need to move this conversation forward. I will that's another conversation.
Just take it. So I'm Miss Melba, the owner, executive and artistic director of Northwest Tap Connection. And
working it out.
You guys that, if you're not familiar with us, we are a race and social justice oriented studio that is committed to closing the gap for communities of color. That means with our youth. It's also providing a space and job opportunities for artists of color where they can work collaborative with students to create pieces that are relevant to our past, our present, and our future. So definitely just having this conversation, sitting in this hub of blackness, y'all know I'm just like all up into it. And thank you so very much. But that's what this is all about. And this piece that we're talking about today is very much the example of what happens when you have the freedom of hubs of blackness to really get in and touch on things that are relevant to us as a people.
Thank you. And so for those of you that are tuning in via Facebook or YouTube, you can put questions in the chat. You can put comments in the chat and we will display them on screen. We will not be able to get to everything, but we will get to as much as possible. I first want to start with just showing a short clip of Hell You're Talking About in case people have not seen it before. And we will show clips throughout the entire process. So if we can go with the first short snippet. All right, we're just giving y'all a little tease right now of the video. We'll bring back some more of the video later on, again, in case you have not seen the video. I want to bring just myself and Miss Shakiah and Miss Melba on the screen. We hope Miss Shakiah is there. There you are. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I've gotten kicked out like 2-3 times or something, so I just keep popping back in here. So I don't know what's going on. I moved to a different spot just to see if I can be in here. Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Shakiah, the first question is for you. What was going on at when you started visioning and creating Hell You're Talking About? What was going on in the country at the time? And also, what I've realized seeing this clip, there are 2 different versions of this, but people are gravitating toward the version more so that was shot in front of the studio. Was something about that version that people keep gravitating towards. And can you tell me about both versions, and why do you think people are gravitating towards that? And also, Miss Melba, the same thing with that question of why people keep gravitating towards that. But Miss Shakiah, what was going on in your mind when you said like this needs to be done?
Honestly, it was overhearing. First of all, there was like we saw Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin, we're looking at Zimmerman being tried and justified, if you will, for his actions. Then you start seeing like a rash of all this footage online of all these. It's not like it's new, you know. It's been happening for a long time, but you just started seeing more clips through social media, more exposure of these officers, you know, kids in a car playing music too loud, you know, and somebody just need to dump in the car. And really what triggered the piece was actually overhearing one of Miss Lekema's sons and Jasiri and two other young boys discuss how to survive law enforcement. They were like 6 or 7 at the time, and it tore me up inside. It tore me up inside because they're not discussing. It's like they're children, so they don't have time to get through the politics and policies and training and de-escalation and things like that. They're just seeing woo 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 sirens. We have law enforcement. They keep seeming to kill grown men who look like me, and they're discussing this as kids, and it just pissed me off and tore me up inside, honestly, because they shouldn't be worried about that at this age. And so it was a combination of that, going home and being like, okay, something got to be done, and then hearing the song. And to me, that song by Janelle Monáe articulated perfectly blood crying out in the streets. And so that's what led to, okay, I'm a hip hop instructor, but I'm at a tap studio, and I feel like tap is the more effective medium for this. And as far as the two versions, we did this first at the Groovement in 2016. And then after that, we did it at a block party, the Beacon Hill block party. And from there, a cell phone clip is the thing that initially went viral. That cell phone, that rickety cell phone clip had like 3-4 million views over the 4th of July weekend. And I just remember being like, you know, and then that's what led to connecting to the gentleman that I collaborated with was covering the Olympics at the time. And we got a hold of someone out here to shoot in front of the studio to be a little more intentional and have a clean version. But then the clip also got to Young Arts, and that's how we got the collaboration with the short film. And so that's like a quick, you know, synopsis of how those two pieces kind of came about. But I think the reason why the one in front of the studio is gravitated to more is because it's more raw, it's more authentic, you know, and it's in front of the place it actually comes from.
Right. Thank you. And Miss Melba, your thoughts on that?
So I agree with Ms. Shakiah, and I think that even more so that you can imagine that both my husband and I, at the time, I was still working with Seattle Police Department, but my husband was a retired police officer from Seattle Police Department. And here we have the studio, and what you're seeing is that when these things happen, young people want to talk to you about what's going on and how could this happen, because we're in that police department. And one of the reasons why we started off with Tap Connection was because of the fact that we wanted to touch kids on an individual basis, that we would see them up close and personal, but never coming across either one of our desks at that time. And so I think that what really hits for this piece, though, is that the very thing that Ms. Shakiah talks about, the rawness of it, but also with tap is such a form that when we talk about tap, we talk about it came out of protest when African drums were, taken away. Then on top of that, you see so much of those things which are rooted in Black culture, call and response, that you're looking at a piece in front of the studio where Black people, how we have done things historically, whether it was at church, Black church, or in Congo Square during the days of plantations, of using this opportunity to dance as a healing. One of the reasons why I have Alice Walker's statement on the front of our building is they talk about, I think it's very much clear, hard times requires furious dancing. And so we know that dancing has always played a vivid African-American history, whether it's dancing at church Sunday or dancing after a rough week and work, where you go to the club and get your dance on. So definitely, I think that those elements of the rawness and the very essence of Blackness is so relevant in this piece.
Thank you. I want to bring in Miss Lekema in this conversation because something that you said, Miss Shakiah, really struck me. Especially, Miss Lekema, you have sons, and so to have these young people talk about this conversation, what, as a Black mother, why should our kids have this conversation? What were you telling your sons about this conversation? Because that's an important part of this entire thing. Like, we have to talk to our children, not when they're like 17, 18, when they are like 5, 6, even younger. So can you talk about that, Miss Lekema, a little bit?
Yes. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. So I do have I have a son that's 30, and I also have twin boys that are 12. And at that time, they were, 8 or something, I believe. Thank you. And so these conversations, as we all know, as Black folks, you have to have these conversations very early, even at the point of when they can start to talk, especially if you are driving while Black, you know the risks. So the children have to know what not to do. If you were to be pulled over, if you were to be walking and stopped, they need to understand what the behaviors are that can produce harm to their bodies. That is a hard conversation that a mother has to have, but it's a necessity. And it's us as parents, we are the primary educators. School is a secondary educator, and understand that there's a third educator, which is the environment, people that they talk to, and the social media. And so as a primary educator, you have to ensure that you are providing them the type of resources, the information necessary to know who they are in their royalness, where they come from as an African people, and also to know that the skin they're in intimidates others just by the skin they're in. And with intimidation causes fear, and with fear, people act out in ways to harm people when they're fearful of them.
Thank you, Ms. Lekema. Again, the way I love these conversations because they take on a whole different turn for me. I have things prepared, but sitting in that for a minute, we all work at Northwest Tap Connection. We are surrounded by Black kids daily. We are surrounded by, we hear police sirens, and I'm not saying that the studio's not in a bad neighborhood because, again, people have misconceptions about where places are because Black folks are living in there, but we hear sirens, we hear these things. What was when you approached the students about this, Miss Shakiah, about being a part of this? What was the reaction? What were the conversations centered around that? And same thing for Miss Lekema and Miss Melba. Here you go.
Okay. I don't think initially I went to the rhythm of it and actually pulled on 2 other instructors that were there at the time, Mr. Alex and Mr. Latwan, for intensity. But the way that I taught anyway, a lot of times I throw something out and then reveal what the music was later. And so I'm not sure, what, I think initially it was like, okay, because my style was a little bit different, I think that the students were gracious with me and just, okay, Miss Shakiah is doing something, let's just go with it. We don't know where she's going to go yet. But once it hit, then it was all about trying to get the reality that we are dancing about people who have passed. We're dancing about people with people's names still being added to this list here. People are still being murdered by law enforcement. Even in my mind, I remember thinking the mind around when Rodney King was captured. Yes. You know what I'm saying? And just thinking that surely there will be justice now because it's on camera, right? But here we are, what are we, 30 years later?
Exactly.
Since the Rodney King incident, and there's still no recompense, for like, where's the accountability? Where's this? Where's that? And I'm just like, I think too, the last ones that seem to be considered in this are ones that can't control anything about it, and that's kids.
Right.
And so my hope also was just like, man, hopefully this is a way to put the future back in front of people's faces, because eventually these kids are going to grow up, and eventually they're going to have their own views, and eventually they're going to do things in the world as a result of what we do right now. And sometimes we're so selfish and reckless, we only think about what we see in front of our face right now. But that's why it's so important to be like, yo, there were children trying to process this. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it also, they can probably speak to this better than I can, but I think it may have given them a way to feel empowered to address stuff that normally they don't have no say in. They can't vote,
Right.
you know, like all I can do is dance, but it's not a small thing that's all you can do.
Right. I will say also the most powerful thing, even if we're looking back to 2016 up until now, we didn't have as many youth protesting in the way that we have now. I see so many youth now on the front lines and in charge of a lot of these protests. So I think the beautiful thing about that is like we doubt the voices of children and youth and teens.
Yes.
But right now, they are moving us in a direction of like, we don't want to have to talk with our children when we have children. We don't want this. So it's beautiful to see that. Miss Lekema or Miss Melba, you want to chime in?
I was just going to say, I think it's really important for me to say too, is that, you know, when Ms. Shakiah first started talking to me about this piece, it really hit me very hard, because I am a woman who was born during segregation. I was born into segregation. And I can still remember being down in Louisiana under Jim Crow, and that my mother would take us to town. And when she would take us to town, she would tell us the story about how we needed to stay in the car, we needed to be close to her. And she would talk about, we didn't want to see happen to us what happened to Emmett Till. And I have to tell you, for years, I thought that Emmett Till was somebody who lived in Covington, Louisiana, born and raised in Covington, Louisiana. And yet this was an action that had happened even before I was born. And so that critical is it was so much to me that this is a conversation that has been ongoing for a long time, because when I'm listening to this music, I hear Emmett Till's name called out, and it took me back to that. And even when we talked about it, you know, one of the things that I did was I was working for Seattle Police Department. My husband had retired, but I went into the department to tell them that we are doing this piece, and that we're doing this piece because I was very concerned about what's happening, and that as a race and social justice that we had to have a voice, and talked about the fact that, yes, I work for Seattle Police Department, but before I started to work for Seattle Police Department, I was a Black woman. When I got a job at Seattle Police Department, I was a Black woman working for Seattle Police Department. And when I retire, I will be a Black woman that used to work for the Seattle Police Department. And
exactly.
You know, that's a critical conversation that talks about that when you're in these spaces, that people need to know that your lens and your views are coming from the lens of who you are. And our identity is definitely not a place. My identity is that of a Black woman. And then furthermore, I would say that Miss Shakiah and I had a lot of conversation as this piece went on, because now all of a sudden, you know, we're getting added things coming on, and we've got children in the midst of it. We have children. And we know from the bombing of the church in, you know, years ago, the children are not just
real.
It's not free. So we had a really conversation, especially when they started talking about that they were calling and wanting to make a mini series. That my thing was, I needed to call every parent for children that was in, and every parent, really to talk to every parent that's at the studio. Because the moment you went from doing something at the grooming and to doing something that people are looking online, then you're opening up this avenue that racist, white America definitely target. And so the studio itself had to make a decision as to whether or not we were willing to stand. And I can really say that everyone in there, and you know, including Blacks, whites, you know, the whole community, because Black community has always been inclusive, said, and then going into this next level with us, we knew that we were giving up some of the rights that we have, but Ms. Shakiah felt very strongly that this was something that needed to be on a platform that was broad. This message needed to, if this action could stop what we've been talking about since the 1920s, okay, living while Black, after Reconstruction, then it was worth it.
Awesome, thank you. Ms. Lekema, you have anything to add to that?
No, that was very powerful. And, Asheo. And that's exactly what we be dealing with. Anytime that we have, and that we know that it's something that we must do. This is not something that we have that we can say yes or no to, but in doing it, we know the risk, right? And that is some of the things that us as Black people have to deal with and leverage on this line all the time. I have to fight for my children. I have to fight based on the ancestors who fought for me to be here to fight. I can't sit here and have the space to be silent. But in my words, in my voice, then it causes risk for my body and my children's body and my community's body. And that's a hard thing to have to balance. And that's what I do want to say, but we must and will and shall continue to do that very thing.
Awesome. I want to play another part of the clip. Like, we're breaking up. You can definitely go see the full thing under Northwest Tap Connection's YouTube page, but we're breaking some of the clip up. Let's go to the next clip.
Say your name. Say your name.
Imani Gray, say his name. Imani Gray, say his name. Imani Gray, say his name. Imani Gray, won't you say his name? John Crawford, say his name. John Crawford, say his name. John Crawford, say his name. John Crawford, won't you say his name? Michael Brown, say his name. Michael Brown.
Awesome. Thank you. I want to bring in the youth. We can just keep everybody on screen, but I definitely want to bring in Alecia and Cipher into this conversation. But Ms. Shakiah, when did you, and so the clip that was at the block party, that blew up, but when did you know it was like, oh, this is something beyond me? When did you realize that?
While it was going up. I was at Essence Fest getting notifications like crazy, just getting and the minute it was jumping 100,000 every hour. I've never had anything like that, but I've also never been like a clout chasing type of person. It's never been necessary for me, but it did let me know it's needed. That's just what it let me know. It's not that it's a hot piece, because this ain't cute. There's nothing cute about this. You know what I'm saying? But it's cathartic, it's bold, it's confrontational, and it's also very challenging. You know what I'm saying? And so that to me was like, oh, okay, so this is a cry that people don't always know that they have necessarily. It's almost like when you play a song, because it says what you can't say. I think people began to share because it was saying something that maybe they didn't have words or moves for.
Right. Thank you. Just a reminder for those that are viewing, you can definitely type in comments or questions via Facebook or YouTube. So please feel free to do that. We will post them. And again, we won't be able to get to everything. Miss Melba, when I kind of slightly remember the conversation, but it started happening that you are not a social media person. No. You were like, what's happening on here? The YouTube thing, but when did you know also it's like, wait a minute, something just happened that changed the trajectory of the studio? When was that moment for you?
Well, I have to tell you, it's really different for me because, you're right. I'm not really on social media. Y'all know I don't have no Facebook. Y'all don't need to be talking about me. Talk to me. So my thing is that I remember Olu Dixon coming to me, one of the young men in the studio, saying to me that we were going viral. And I tell you, I thought that somebody done been on my computer again because we had problems where the kids was using my computer and getting these viruses on. I was like, oh no, you done lost your mind. Y'all had a virus on my computer? At which time, no, Miss Melba. And then that's when he showed me what's going on with the video.
Right.
So for me, I have to tell you, it's not like I was really surprised because I had watched Miss Shakiah and Alex in the studio talking about this piece and working it through. And so I knew that this was going to be something different, okay? Then as we started to look at the piece and see it and look at the reactions, I remember a conversation that me and Miss Shakiah talked about. And I said to her that, the arts have always played an important part when we look at the Harlem Renaissance, okay? But
Yep.
I really thought about the song Strange Fruit.
Yes.
Because people were so busy singing that song, and then just from then all of a sudden you get to Black Body Swinging, and it brought about, through this song, this whole narrative about what was happening down south. And so I said to Miss Shakiah that I felt like that this is what was going to happen. And then we would begin to see that video blew off. Then, with Young Arts, I got a call from a young man that we were very familiar with from TAP, with the festivals and everything. And so he called me and wanted to talk about this collaboration. So definitely, I just think that that the essence of Northwest TAP is about creating pieces that are going to change the narrative and thought patterns regarding Blackness. So definitely, I told Miss Shakiah, you might as well be ready for it. We don't know what all it's going to involve here, but I knew from the moment that I saw the work that was being done in the studio, to be honest with you.
Awesome, thank you. I want to bring in Lacey and Cipher into this conversation along with Miss Lekema and talk about the multi-generational aspect. We grew up in Black families. We understand the importance of that multi-generational interaction. Why do you all think it was important for this piece to have that aspect, that it was not just young children or young adults, but it was our elders, it was everybody involved in this piece? Why do you three think that it was important for that to happen? Let's start with you, Lacey. We got you, Lacey. There you go.
Okay. Throughout the video, you see like the younger generation, which maybe about 4-year-olds to 6-year-olds, they are tend to be shown dancing and smiling, but like knowing like what the actual music is about, you see that they don't really know what's really going on. They're like joyful at a time like this. And then when you see more of the teenagers dance, we're more serious, but when we get into the adults, it's kind of, you see the difference between the gravity. And I feel like it was a good thing to see the multi-generations, because it kind of showed how we're all coping with it differently and how we all understand it differently, and like the difference in time and aging. And so, yeah.
Yeah, let's go to Cipher.
Yeah, I would definitely like to add to what Lacey had just said. I would agree that you can definitely see, like, honestly, you just see the human experience in its entirety. Lacey highlighted like the younger children, particularly like the babies, the toddlers, the 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds. They depict more of a happiness feeling, and we as human beings have happy emotions. The teenagers, we're more kind of like on the front lines of the piece, and we're depicting more seriousness. And I think at that stage in life as teenagers, we are able to, I think for me personally, from just in my time of being alive and witnessing particularly Black males being murdered. The first person who I can really remember at the moment was Trayvon Martin. The death of Trayvon Martin was definitely very shocking, and it made it very real, a very like, whoa, that could have been me experience. And Miss Shakiah she made it a point to constantly bring up the ages of the people whose names were being called out in the piece. And so I think with it being multi-generational, we have the trickle down of just experiences. My mom, she constantly talks about like the Black, I asked her, I was like, you know, what were the Black deaths, like what kind of Black police brutality experiences do you have? And she would like explain to me. And so there's just, I feel like we have this trickle down of information, and also just a depiction of the entire human experience. You have happiness, you have sadness, you have frustration. And we as Black people are trying to display that we are, in fact, human beings. And we have many different ways of coping with this. And so to me, the importance of having the multi-generational experience is to be able to learn from one another and to help depict what we as human beings, Black human beings, are experiencing during these times.
Thank you, Cipher. Miss Lekema, in the video, in the clip, and I think we'll show a clip of that. It is you, your mom, and your sister, three people that I love dearly. What was that like? And then your children were also in the clip. What was that like to be a part of that, and then have the generations and the family in that? That for people that don't know, that's a really powerful statement within itself.
Mm-hmm. So why is it? It is very echoey. My apologies. It hadn't been. The importance of intergenerational. One, let's start with we are an African people. And so this idea of separation and division comes from the white dominant culture. As you know, when we gather from grandmama and them to the babies, and we all commune together. We also pray together. We eat together, we mourn together, because we are all connected. We are connected from the people that have passed before us, our ancestors, and who came through us, and then those that will be continuing on in the generations to come. And it's very important to continue to have intergenerational connection, because it's what feeds all of us. It feeds all of us. And as Cipher said, it's also a way that we can lean on each other, learn from one another in our different understandings of experience, right? Then you gain wisdom. What it feels like to have my children, I had all three children, my mother, and then my sister. We have a 14-year difference. It was powerful. I want to say that 2016, it was a very short time after my brother's death that this particular piece was filmed. So understand that our family was mourning the loss of my little brother. And he wasn't killed by police, but he did suffer based on white racist structural institutions. And therefore, we were saying his name as well, and saying all the names of our people who have been and continue to be perpetuated upon based on these racist systems and infrastructures that are built from the from the soil that we're on. So what you see there, when you see our faces in that pain, that's the pain of the loss of my brother that had died just a few, if not a month prior, but a few days after his passing. I don't know if I answered that question, but I do want to say that the elders provide the wisdom in which that we learn, and then that we share with our youth to continue to move forward. And so it was a very emotional piece for us. And that's all I can say. It was, my brother had just died, so we were saying his name for real.
Thank you, Ms. Lekema. We're gonna move into just showing another piece of the of Hell You're Talking About from Northwest Tap Connection.
Look at us on.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I wanted to move into a question that we had from Kat Richard. I think I'm saying that name right in the comments. My question is for Ms. Shakiah. You mentioned that you teach hip hop, but felt that tap was a more effective medium as a tap dancer. I'm biased, but I'm curious why you chose tap. Let me just hold off on that question for 1 second, Ms. Shakiah. I just want to say this for white people and folks that are watching. We cannot separate our blackness and no matter what form it is. And that's the thing I think people don't understand is that you may be a tapper, you may be someone that's into African dance or ballet, but we understand that it's all interconnected. So what I see, I'm a dancer myself, so I can speak on this in this way. What I see from a lot of dancers that are not from the diaspora, it's easy for them to separate and judge that this is not worthy, this is not worthy. But we understand when we see tappers that it's connected to African dance. When we see hip hop dancers, it's connected to African dance and tap. When we see house dancers, it's connected to everything. So, and it is not to make you feel bad. It is just to let you know that we cannot separate any forms of ourselves. We may have our specialty in these things, but we can't separate it. But Ms. Shakiah, why did you gravitate towards tap and you are a hip hop dancer?
Mr. Dani, thank you. I'm not offended by that question at all. Let me also say that, but it is very real that we cannot separate. I'm not an expert in this, and you've never heard me say it, but I'm around those resources. I'm around that specific style, that specific genre. And what was more important to me was the messaging. That's the thing here. When you care about your people, you don't need to be the main whatever. You know what I'm saying? It might not have done as well if I chose hip hop. It's a very cathartic, rhythmic piece. It involves drums, and I feel like why not add your own rhythm to it? Not only that, it was structured this way because it was meant to be a piece of solidarity that would eventually invite other styles into the center of it. But the person that I was working with to create this solidarity campaign, if you will, at the time, did what a lot of people do. They start seeing all these views, they start seeing all the attention being drawn to it, and something sneaks up in their heart. They get greedy. You know what I'm saying? And so I cut it off. And that's just what kind of comes when you have something like this. You have to be willing to box and defend, even if people throw money at you, people throw platforms at you, people throw all kinds of stuff at you, but it's all for their gain. You know what I'm saying? It's for their gain. It's for their self-exaltation. Meanwhile, these babies over here could still potentially get shot. And that is the reality. You know what I'm saying? Everybody wasn't happy about this piece. And so I'm very, I appreciate you saying that, because if you're not a part of the community, you then start trying to dissect from your lens. You know what I'm saying? To me, it's black on black on black on black on black on black on black. And why not involve all of it? You know what I'm saying? And why not defy some of these stereotypes, and why not defy some of the things that might be said? It's countercultural just to see everybody on the same page. I absolutely agree with the intergenerational aspect of it. We're not trying to throw away our wisdom. We're not trying to, you don't get to keep saying we don't care about what's popping in our community. You don't get to keep saying that. You know what I'm saying? This is a blatant demonstration of it. And, you know, don't come with your books and your expertise and your studies and your travels. Respect this culture and respect the cry that's coming from this culture, whatever way it comes. Does that make sense? Did you guys hear me?
Miss Shakiah, you about to make me throw my computer.
Oh, okay.
You about to make me throw my computer for real. I'm sitting over here like, Miss Melba, what you got to add to that? Because I know you got something to say. Y'all about to make me.
I just wanted to talk about that intergenerational, because what happens is that a lot of the times we hear, well, gee, it's been 400 years and they're still talking about what happened in slavery days, okay? But in this type of piece, when you talk about intergenerational, it's so critical because the trauma that exists in 2020 is a trauma that goes into intergenerational, because when you have already lost someone, like Shakiah talks about the fact that when she did this piece, they were in the process of mourning her brother. They had already gone through the trauma of trying
Miss
to...
Lekema, you mean Miss Lekema?
Miss Lekema.
Lekema. I just said Lekema, right?
You said Shakiah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not Miss Lekema. That they had already talked about that they were mourning their brother. And so when we see this happen over and over again, the trauma is great, because I can remember being in Brazil in 2015, and I'm watching on this international, Portuguese news about Black shootings in the United States. And then once that happens, maybe somebody got shot 2 years ago and, it kind of go down and you kind of a little bit past it. But then here come 3 years, you got the same incident happening and there hasn't been any evolution or change. So when we talk about trauma within the Black community, it's always going to be intergenerational, because this type of life living goes all the way back to the days of plantation living, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and the New Deal America, what we look at now. So I think that that's a really critical part to hear about the fact when we're talking about intergenerational. And then I think Miss Shakiah said it very well. Black dance, if you look, everything you look at, you're gonna find it from Michael Jackson doing the moonwalk to saying, wait a minute, that's the moonwalk, but I see it as a Bill Bailey from a tap dancer.
Awesome, thank you. Lacey and Cipher, I wanted to ask you all this question. What is it that the younger generation actually needs to listen to from the older generation? And what does the older generation actually need to listen to from the younger generation? Because a lot of times we are at odds and at times saying the same thing, but saying it differently or have different approaches to it. So from your point of view, what do we need to hear from you all, and what do you all need to hear from us? Cipher, you can go first.
Yeah. So I actually, Lacey and I are actually really close friends, and we talk about this actually a lot. And I would say, Mr. Dani, you actually touched on this, that a lot of times the younger generation and the older generation are actually saying a lot of the same things and have a lot of the same frustrations pertaining to Blackness in itself. But when we dive into the specific aspects of Blackness, I think our communication styles differ. And so we're completely misunderstanding what we're saying, what one another are saying. And I would say, as a young person, some of my biggest frustrations with the older communities have been, I think the world would like to say, like, oh, the older generations aren't as progressive or they're not as understanding. And I kind of disagree. I think a lot of things that older generations have in their mind were actually set in place to kind of keep them safe in a lot of ways. And I think with the evolution of technology and the progression of social media, that we have access to see the individuality in people and the intersectionality of things. And so I would say, as a younger person, I would just like to feel like our voices are being shared and kind of, at least, even if we don't agree, you at least respect where it is that I'm coming from, because this is my personal experience as a younger person. I think, and vice versa, we can definitely be better about listening. I think us as younger people, our attention spans are very quick. And when we talk about the Black Lives Matter movement on social media, we see a lot about, this isn't just Spirit Week. This isn't, like just a moment of time. Like, people in the past, like the bus boycott, that happened for over a year before they finally stopped protesting because changes were actually starting to occur. And so I just think the minute we start acknowledging one another and saying, look, I hear you, I see you, I understand what you are saying, and actually taking the time to just listen to one another, we can move a lot further.
Yeah, I totally agree with Cipher in the way that we need to listen to each other. And I feel like both adults and youth have these kind of some type of bias against one another, or like misconceptions or even stereotypes. A lot of young people think that, older people can be, like Cipher said, narrow-minded, or a lot of older people think younger people can be very, this idea of just trying to be rebellious or doing things for because it's trending. But I would say also just listening to each other. And in the end, we would probably see that we're really talking about the same thing. And also, I've seen that a lot of older people have, in a way, sort of lost hope in the fight for maybe justice, if that's how you would say it. Yeah, for the fight and justice, and have not realized that there's multiple ways of protest and of ways to fight for justice. And I would say just keeping an open mind and being open to different ways that we can all come, or that we can all go to the same goal, the end goal, and how we're all working for the same thing, and just understanding each other.
Awesome, thank you. This question is for everybody. We what goes on? We protest when there are Black men being killed. We say their name when Black women are being killed. I come from a queer community. We don't even say their name. And these are all Black people. Trans women are getting killed, trans men, Black women, Black girls are getting killed. We say Breonna Taylor's name, but the anger is not there. The strong call for justice is not there. Why do we continue to uplift Black straight men in this fight and not paying the same attention to Black women? Because Black women, whatever your intersection is, the more intersections you have, the least in the total pole you are as far as humanity goes. So what are your thoughts on, one, why do we keep doing that? And two, how do we uplift all Black people? How can we get just as mad when we see all Black people getting killed? That's a broad question.
Okay. Can I jump in on that one first?
Yes.
Get that up? My perspective on it is this: a lot of times, nothing beyond your complexion is allowed to make it to the table. And so, I mean, take Philando Castile. His daughter was sitting in the back seat, and this man got lit up.
Yep.
In front of his daughter. He was not, nothing else about him was considered. He could have been trans. He could have been, you know what I'm saying? He could have been, the fact that he was a father didn't matter. The fact that he worked at a cafeteria didn't matter. The fact that he was a licensed carrier, nothing mattered beyond his melanin. And I don't think anyone should be murdered because of how they identify. I don't believe anyone should be murdered because of what their preference is, or how they see themselves, or where they intersect, as you said, Mr. Dani. And to be honest, I'm not even fully educated on how many there are, because to me it seems like there's more distinctions being brought. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not as educated regarding just how many there are. So hear my heart in that. I want to be respectful to it, but I don't even think it makes it to the table. If you get stopped by a cop, I doubt you get to be queer before you get to be black. I'm
always black first. Yes, I'm always black first.
You know what I'm saying? 100%. So my concern, I don't feel like the black community in general is even in a position to afford to separate on anything. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's this or religion or whatever, I feel like where my heart is coming from, we all could get shot.
Yes.
Because we're black. You get what I'm saying? Like that right there is the common thread. And so it's not that it's not important. I just don't even think it has an opportunity to make it to the table in the eyes of the wrong person. You know what I'm saying? Being a mother don't make it to the table. Being a son don't make it to the table. You know, none of that stuff makes it to the table. It's, I see that you're black and I'm coming for you. I have a problem with your complexion. I have a problem with, and some of that too, to me, is like an ingrained guilt. When you know you've wronged, you know you got wrong coming, so you try to beat it to the punch. You know what I'm saying? And so my perspective isn't that it's not that it doesn't matter. It's just I don't even think it has an opportunity to make it to the table in a lot of these situations.
I think, and I agree with you with that. I also feel like when it's down for the protest, when it's down for uplifting people's name, we do go through, this is a man, this is what he's done. And Breonna Taylor, this happened months ago, and we are just now hearing about it. And so we're hearing about her as far as like, she was an essential worker. She did these things. But again, she is not getting, in my opinion, she is not getting the same amount of anger that so many of the black men have gotten. We had a black trans woman on the front lines protesting, and she got savagely beat. And so again, and people are focusing on her trans identity and not the fact that you are just a black person out there because you know it is wrong. And so I think that's where I'm shaping my question in. Is not, we know as a black person, you get killed by somebody, they just see your skin color. They don't care what your intersections are. But when we start looking in the news, we start breaking things down, and then people become less than depending on what it is. And I'm just asking the question, like, how do we make sure the same care and love is given to black women when we start protesting? Because we know the idea of killing folks.
Mr. Dani, I'm gonna jump in if that's okay with you.
Yes.
I think it's really important for us to understand history of blackness, and then that kind of defines what that happens. You know, when you go back to those days of plantation living, and I talk about this all the time, when they talk about what happens with plantation living, what was the highest death with doing plantation living? It was babies, infants were the highest because they starved to death. Then when you look at how they actually separated out families, that when there was a family in plantation living, that they allowed the children to stay in the housing with the women. However, when a male became 10, at the age of 10, a black male was considered an adult, and they took them out of the house from there, and they put them into where they said, hey, if I get 10 years of your work production, I've earned my money. So I think historically within Black culture, there is this embracing and fear and protectiveness that goes to Black males. because the males as that head of what we look at as head of the household, even though we know that's not always is that we have this feeling that Black males have never been treated as Black males. Even when I grew up in Jim Crow, I would listen to these white men talk about my father and say to me, "Oh, you little gal should be really proud because I tell you, Ed is a good boy. He's a good boy." Now, for me, myself, I was so angry because I used to say into myself is, why do they call my dad a boy? When will my dad be a man? And so these feelings of protectiveness is for Black males that come from a long time in the making. When you think about that Black women were raped in front of their Black male husbands, that is, so there's this link that when we talk about Black males, we're very protective about them. Even when you're talking about the schools now, we're talking about what's happening with Black males. And that's not to say that it is right or wrong, but that is the trauma that historically comes in from the days of plantation living, Reconstruction, and Jim Crow. And we have not been able to walk over and start to think differently. But these type of conversations, these types of arts work starts those conversations with looking at how we look at all lives of Blackness, regardless if it's through police shootings or Black on Black crimes. So this is definitely a change that's coming. I believe that this is a change that's coming. I have a grandson that's a Black male. And when they look at him, they're going to see a Black male. But I believe that the stance that we're taking today is going to change that narrative tomorrow.
Thank you. And another reason I pose this question is because we are Black instructors, Black students at Northwest Tap Connection, and predominantly have young girls and young women in our studios taking classes. And I often walk in thinking to myself, what is my responsibility to protect them also? I think we are more conditioned to know how to protect Black men. We are less conditioned in understanding how to protect young Black women and girls and older Black women. And that's just a historic thing. And so every time that I'm in these conversations and talk to people, I go back to how do we protect the people that are the least protected? We know how to do that. And so that is why I'm bringing that conversation up. Oh, we are running out of time. There's so much to talk about. I hate this. It's so much to talk about. I wanted to get to a question from the audience. I'm gonna say her name wrong. Nakia Isabel. Did I say the name wrong, Miss Shakiah? Say it for me.
You got it. You got it. It's Nakia Isabel. You got it.
Thank you.
You got it.
Ooh, my reading skills are good. Thank you for this conversation. Can you all speak to the importance of utilizing art to impact and spread a message versus taking advantage and capitalizing off of a culture and community? Can we have the youth answer that question?
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll go to the adults.
I could go. So I think it starts, if you're not a part of the culture, take the time to research it, learn about it, like take class from people who actually live these experiences and acknowledge the fact that you are still a student in this art form and or whatever you're using to promote the messaging or spread your awareness. I think there's been a lot of people, white people, particularly white women, utilizing Black cultures such as like hip hop, tap, whatever that may be. If they took some form of an African dance style, I've witnessed, at least on social media, them utilizing those art forms, or at least dancing to Black music and promoting whatever, and just like leeching off of the views and off of everything that comes with that, and aren't really acknowledging what's happening currently to Black people. It's like been for a very early stage in finding out about the death of George Floyd. A lot of my white followers or people who I was following were very silent and weren't saying anything and weren't utilizing their allyship to speak on what is happening. And it's frustrating because it's like you love our culture, so you love our culture so much, and you are gaining a lot of clout off of utilizing Black bodies. And honestly, to me, it just touches on just the history of Black people and how we have been brought to the United States for them to once again profit off of us. You know, there was slavery, then all of the Reconstruction, and today I just feel like we're seeing it. One of the mediums that we're seeing that in is Black art. They love us when we make a poppin' album. They love us when we sell out their shows. They love us when, you know, whatever. But then the minute it's time to speak up about what's happening, it gets real silent.
Thank you. Ms. Lekema, I want to have you jump in on that conversation.
Yeah, so Blackness and the appropriation of what one deems Blackness is has been something that has happened since we have been on this planet. We have seen the erasure of Black existence in our history clear back to Kemet, which is now Egypt, and how throughout the media you see that Egyptian gods and so forth are all considered to be white and so forth. What this is all about the construct and the power, right? And so as we continue to understand and know that the power says, and this goes back to your question, why we only seem to have anger with the males, is because we're in a white dominated society, a patriarchic society, meaning that it's governed by men, those same men that were the founders of America, who were rapists, okay, who were thieves, liars, people that were not had well intentions from the get-go. So when systems and policies are built through the sheer ignorance and through fear, then that's why you have the indoctrination, or how we have subscribed to only see that the male is what's most important, right? So anything that's not in this mature masculine ideology of patriarchness can be discarded. And so that's what, although we may be, we may not agree with that, our own beliefs may not agree on that, but the indoctrination of this whiteness that we have been immersed in for generations causes us to act out on things that we may not even believe. That's called implicit bias. And those implicit biases that are in your head are based on all these imageries that we've seen, are based on these policies, are based on our schooling, right? And oftentimes we're not aware that we're acting off of something that is not even our thought. So what we have to do is to come inside and get back rooted to who we are as Africans. Understand that the root has been severed. And when your root has been severed, you have now took on the ideology of someone else. In our culture, we honor everyone. Yes. Everyone is honored. About appropriation, here specifically in the Northwest, African dance has been really appropriated, and there's a lot of things that have. I'm gonna have some conversations around it. I got a couple of events that are going to come up around this question, but there is anti-Blackness in the African dance arena here in Northwest. It is toxic to go to African dance classes if you're a person of the African diaspora.
That's why I stopped.
Period. Point blank toxic, right? And you would ask, why is it toxic? Because it is inundated with whiteness. It has come to the point that we have to fight. We came here and have been severed from our roots. We are now, a lot of the Africans born in America are looking to reconnect to their roots. And now when we are starting African dance arena to reconnect to our roots, our spirituality, what it is to commune with God through dance, we have now a barrier of whiteness. There is, and as Cipher said, it is mainly white women, right, that are in the front line, that they go to Africa and they can stay for 7-10 months and learn the dances and so forth. It's all about their privilege, right? And they come back and say, well, now I'm gonna teach you your culture.
Yes.
And so they're teaching classes on the collegiate level when there is plenty of Africans from the diasporas, Africans born on the continent, that should be teaching those classes. I want to say to all white women, white men, stand down. Stand down. This is not your culture. It is not acceptable to appropriate in any way. And I stand with that. It is okay to support. I understand that you think it's wonderful and maybe a great physical thing for you, but this is our roots. This is about how we heal, how we commune, and how we relate to our God. Understand that. This is not a trend. This is what's in.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to cough because I don't even know where to go from here because we need to wrap up. I don't even know where to go. Miss Melba, can you please talk about the fundraiser? No, we're going to have you talk about that in a second. Lacey, you talk about the fundraiser and why is it important for people to give to Northwest Tap Connection. Let's hear from the young people.
Okay, well, firstly, it's important to give to Northwest Tap Connection because we are a race and social justice oriented studio. And our mission is inclusive of providing job opportunities to artists of color, specifically the Black community in South Seattle, and just giving a space for Black artists to create work that adds to their history and their story, and creating work that fosters change. And also, Northwest Tap Connection has given youth so many opportunities. We have opportunities to travel, perform, and even teaching opportunities. And it doesn't only just teach dance. We've learned so many life lessons, and we're continuing to learn so many life lessons. And yeah, just the studio that educates and emphasizes the importance of Blackness and standing and having pride in your Blackness. And yeah.
Thank you. Miss Melba?
Well, I think that Lacey did a wonderful job in talking about Northwest Tap Connection. And all I can tell you is that, Northwest Tap Connection is founded on the principles of Black community, which is definitely inclusive. And so as I tell people that it's not just a studio just for Black children, we welcome all children and all adults to come in. But it is definitely to know that our emphasis is on Blackness, about defining Blackness, understanding Blackness, looking at integrity and versus reputation. And so for myself, it's that I can only tell you how to be Black. I can't tell you how to live a white life or a Filipino life, or I can tell you about Blackness. But what we know about Blackness is that Blackness, when Blackness is well taken care of, everybody is well taken care of, okay?
Very true.
And so what's good for Black children is good for all children, because that's just the way it is. So definitely we have been very blessed. People have been really helping out. We were running our campaign right now about trying to keep the money just to pay our basic utilities and rent and everything until we get back into place, because we will not open up again until September, with the hopes that October will not be a second phase of shutdown again. But definitely donations, if we can pass that 75,000 so that we can keep our GAP scholarships that have played such an intricate part of giving kids and an opportunity to dance on a more competitive level, because most people can afford to pay for one class, but if you really want to be a dancer, you're going to be dancing anywhere from 6 to 7 hours a week. And that's where we find people of color just cannot afford to have that type of experience. So definitely for all the people who have been so gracious in helping Northwest Tap Connection, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It really touches me knowing that I come from a marginalized people and how I have seen that people of all walks and colors within life has been so generous to us. So thank you again.
Awesome. Before we get to the final question and final thoughts, I just want to say, one, thank you all for tuning in to this. This is, both organizations hold a very special place in my heart. Literally, when I came to Seattle, I started with Northwest Tap Connection, and then I did probably some of my first work with Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas. And so, and it's been over 12 years. I've been here for 12 years. And so to say that like Black folks are strong and we hold each other up, I've been held up and lifted up from both organizations from the time that I've been here. So please make sure that you donate to Northwest Tap Connection in South Seattle, Rainier Beach area, Henderson and Rainier. We ain't going nowhere. We're not trying to get out of this area because we need to make sure Black folks stay in this area. The final thing I want to say about Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas, on July 11th, we are having our Bougie Brunch Soiree, hosted by the lovely Randy Ford. It is a fundraiser, but it's also a very chilled event. Get cute, get on social media, get some food. We have 3 food vendors. We have all of that stuff. And it's just to keep us around. We've been here for 21 years. We're trying to go into our 22nd year. And these are the type of programs that we want to present to you all. We believe in Black voices. We believe in Black thought. We believe in Black arts. So please, if you can, if you got $2 to donate, we will take your $2. So don't hesitate. It ain't like that. You ain't got to buy this expensive ticket. Please go to our website and we'll have more information. Also go to Northwest Tap Connection's website. They will have more information. We know this is just the start of a conversation. It is so much deeper than that, but I wanted to get some final thoughts. Cipher, you know my favorite question is, what is your joy? That is part of it. And also, I just, from Miss Shakiah and Miss Melba, the final question outside of what is your joy is also, where do you see Hell You Talking About going next? What do you envision for that? Cipher, what's your joy?
My joy is Black art right now. Art has always been a form of protest, and I just love Blackness in all of its forms. So Black art is my joy.
Thank you. Lacey?
My joy right now would have to be my community and the people that I'm surrounding myself with right now, which are all Black people and my Black friends, my Black family, and just my Black community.
Thank you. Miss Lekema?
My Blackness brings me joy. My business is called Skin I'm In, unapologetically Black in the skin you're in. And so I'm just joyful for the Blackness that I'm in. Even though we have so much trauma, so much pain, I wouldn't want to be nobody else. Everybody want to be us.
Thank you.
They want the rhythm, but they don't want the blues. Holla.
Say that. Miss Shakiah, what is your joy and where do you see Hell You Talking About next?
For me personally, my joy has been stillness and a peace of mind. You know, it's very difficult to have in the middle of everything. And those 2 things have become very, very, very precious to me, stillness and a peace of mind. And where I see Hell You Talking About going next is, I think what we're doing now is where Hell You Talking About goes next. I think a lot of people are wanting to, you know, view it, share it, but the discussion around it, you know, not everybody knows how to break ice. Not everybody knows how to, you know, get into an uncomfortable, ugly, necessary conversation. I think we live in a culture where keeping it 100 is thrown around very loosely. But when you do keep it 100, your nostrils are wide open, you're vulnerable, you are looking crazy, you are shaking, but you're still talking. You know what I'm saying? And so I think Hell You Talking About is one of several things that will begin to help people start to facilitate these kinds of conversations. That's where I see this going. And my personal desire for it is that it also begins to help with this issue being addressed in churches specifically.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Miss Melba, what is your joy and where do you see this going next?
My joy is the same as my inspiration. I have 3 grandchildren. Sade, who is 4, TJ almost a year and a half, and Serena, who is right at 3 weeks. And definitely that joy is what gives me the inspiration to keep doing what I'm doing, so that their lives are different than what mine was, and that their thoughts about this definitely is different than what I grew up with, being Blackness. As far as I would tell you, what I would really like to see is I would like to see that video sitting at the African American Museum in Washington, D.C., because I think that it is very much about what this time is for us and the documentation of time, and that I've had over 75 calls and requests for people using it from Juneteenth celebrations to using it to have discussion about Black Lives Matter. And I think that the very thought of how it came to place, it deserves to be at the Smithsonian African American Museum as a documentation of what happens with the arts and how we use the arts to bring about change.
Awesome, thank you. And just to let the audience know, Miss Melba had a major news station saying that they wanted to cover this, and she came to me as someone at Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas, and I just feel honored with that. Just because what I understand and what I understand about working at Northwest Tap Connection, and what I understand just about my life is that there's a way that we can tell our stories that will put the love around it, that will put the support around it, that we won't shut anybody's voices out.
Right.
And so I thank you all for being a part of this, for coming to CD Forum to get this conversation started in a way that I hope we bring honor to you all. We bring honor to the people that were in the video. Ms. Shakiah, thank you for your vision. Thank you for I know you go with God. I know you do. And when it's placed on you, that's how you move. And so I thank you for moving in that direction so that we can have this conversation, so that video and can exist in the world. Thank you, everybody. Again, we didn't touch on everything, but I think you will walk away with something, and we will do this over and over again until there's no longer a need to have these conversations. And that won't be any time in my lifetime. So yes, thank you all. It's lovely to see y'all faces virtually, because can't see y'all in person. So it's great to see your faces virtually. And everyone, you have a very lovely afternoon. And if you're in Seattle, it's raining. So we deal with that. We just move on. And we will see you all later. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.